Years had gone by. Time flowed like the sacred waters of the Ganga. King Shantanu, though burdened by the memories of the past, often found himself wandering along the river banks seeking solace in her eternal flow. One such day, as his chariot rolled along the sacred river, a most astonishing sight met his eyes. There stood a young boy, barely 16, yet performing a feat no mortal had ever dared. With his bow swift as lightning, he released arrow after arrow into the mighty river. To Shantanu's amazement, the arrows did not sink, they held, forming a barrier that tamed the rushing waters of the Ganga. King Shantanu could hardly believe his eyes. The sacred river herself, whose force had humbled kings and sages alike, was now being held back by the will of a mere youth. Who was this extraordinary boy? From where did he get such power and such skill? In that moment, Shantanu's heart filled with questions. Could this be an ordinary child or someone born of divine destiny? The king resolved to know the truth about the young archer who could command the river goddess herself. And thus began a new chapter in Shantanu's life, one that would lead him to a revelation beyond his imagination. The king approached the radiant youth. His posture was noble, his skills unmatched, and his face glowed with divine brilliance. Shantanu's heart whispered, "This child is no ordinary mortal." And then, before Shantanu's very eyes, the river parted, and from her depths emerged the goddess Ganga herself with a serene smile. She spoke, "O King Shantanu, behold your son Devavrat, born of your love and my womb. He has been raised in the heavens by the god themselves. Today I bring him to you, for his destiny lies besides you." Shantanu's eyes filled with tears. Years of longing, sorrow, and unanswered questions melted away in an instant. His heart recognized what his mind could barely grasp. This was his own child, his blood, his legacy. Thus, father and son were united. Devavrata, blessed with divine knowledge, trained by the greatest teachers of gods and men, now stood ready to walk beside his father, destined to shape the future of Hastinapura. But little did they know, the boy who held back the Ganga with his arrows would one day hold back the tides of destiny itself. This was the beginning of Bhishma. After years of longing, King Shantanu was finally reunited with his son Devavrat. With joy in his heart and pride in his eyes, the king returned to Hastinapura accompanied by the young prince. As the chariot entered the city gates, word spread quickly that the prince has returned. The citizens of Hastinapura rushed to the streets to behold the sight. The air was filled with festivity, conches blew, drums thundered, and garlands of fresh flowers rained upon the father and son. The people rejoiced, for they saw not only their beloved king, but also the promise of a bright future in the young Devavrat. Tall, radiant, and noble, Devavrat looked every bit the prince the people had dreamed of. His grace humbled hearts, his valor inspired confidence, and his presence filled the kingdom with hope. In the palace, too, joy knew no bounds. Ministers, priests, and elders of the court welcomed the prince with open arms. The entire kingdom celebrated the arrival of one who was destined to uphold Dharma and protect Hastinapura. But destiny's story never rests, for while Shantanu's heart was filled with joy, fate was already weaving the threads of challenges yet to come, challenges that would test both the king and his son. One day, as King Shantanu wandered once again along the river banks, Destiny had arranged a meeting that would change the course of the Kuru dynasty forever. In a humble boat sat a maiden of extraordinary grace. Her beauty was simple yet divine, her eyes radiant with purity, her presence filling the air with an enchanting fragrance. The maiden was Satyavati, the daughter of a fisherman, yet destined for greatness. Shantanu's heart trembled. Never before had he felt such attraction, such pull, such warmth. In her fragrance, he lost his senses, and in her presence, he forgot the weight of his crown. The king spoke gently, his voice carrying both admiration and desire. He asked her name, her family, her life upon the river, and with each word she spoke, Shantanu's heart grew only fonder. From that very moment, Shantanu knew he wished to make Satyavati his queen. Yet fate had its trials waiting, for her father, the humble fisherman, carried a condition that would shake the very foundations of Hastinapura. Captivated by Satyavati's beauty and grace, King Shantanu approached her father, the humble fisherman, seeking her hand in marriage. O noble chief, your daughter shines with a divine glow. I wish to marry her and make her queen of Hastinapur. Bless me with her hand. Satyavati's father answers, O king, I am honored by your proposal, yet I am bound by a father's duty. If my daughter is to be queen, her children must inherit the throne of Hastinapur. Shantanu answers, But noble chief, my son Devavrata, born of Ganga, is already heir to the throne. How can I deny his right? Satyavati's father, with a stern voice, answers, Then forgive me, O king. I cannot let my daughter's sons live in uncertainty, always overshadowed by another heir. If Satyavati is to wed you, it must be with the assurance that her children will reign as kings of Hastinapur. Thus, destiny posed a cruel dilemma before Shantanu, a choice between the woman who had captured his heart and the son who was his pride. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but King Shantanu's heart remained heavy. Ever since his meeting with the maiden Satyavati, his mind had lost its balance. The mighty king, who once ruled with wisdom and justice, now sat alone in his chamber, lost in sorrow. He no longer cared for affairs of the state. The people of Hastinapur whispered in worry. The king, who was once their protector, seemed to have abandoned his duties. His ministers dared not disturb him, for they knew his grief ran deep. However, from the shadows of the court, one pair of eyes watched over the king with love and duty. Devavrat, the noble son of Shantanu, understood the sorrow that chained his father's heart. Yet, as the crown prince, he also knew the weight of the kingdom rested upon his shoulders. And so, while the king drowned in despair, it was Devavrat who began to guide the throne of Hastinapur, ensuring that the kingdom did not crumble under the shadow of the grief. Days turned into weeks, yet King Shantanu's sorrow only deepened. He withdrew from the affairs of the kingdom, his heart burdened with longing for Satyavati. The palace echoed with silence, and the throne of Hastinapur stood unattended. The ministers grew restless, and the people worried. But none felt the weight of his sorrow more than Devavrat, the dutiful son, the warrior prince, the pride of Hastinapur. Devrat approaches his father and says, "Father, the burden of this pain is too great upon you. As your son, it is my duty to see you happy and our kingdom prosperous. Tell me what troubles your heart so deeply." King Shantanu's silence spoke louder than words. Devrat, wise beyond his years, understood. He had already heard whispers of a maiden on the river banks, the fisherman's daughter, whose fragrance had ensnared his father's heart. "Father, do not grieve. If it is her presence that brings light to your soul, then I shall go to her father myself and seek her hand in marriage for you." With this vow, Devrata set forth his resolve unshaken. For him, no sacrifice was too great for the happiness of his father and the honor of Hastinapur.